Well, now joining us is our former U.S. Congressman, Colin Allred. Colin, thank you so much for coming in here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to get right into this, okay? So back in 2024, you made a bid for a statewide position. You ran for U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz. You lost that election in November by almost 1 million votes. So we're not even a year past that yet, and you're running back in for another statewide position, again for the U.S. Senate. The question really is, why are you jumping back in so quick for another statewide position bid?
Yeah, well, listen, I spent 6 or 7 months with my family going to Home Depot, the airport, gas stations, having so many people coming up to me, telling me how concerned they were about what was happening in our state and in our country. Listen, I'm proud that in the last election we outran the top of our ticket by over 5 points, but it wasn't enough. And as an athlete, I think you spend time thinking, well, what could you do differently? And I thought if I was going to do this again, that I'd want to do it to where we speak directly to working people who grew up the way I did. I was raised by a single mom in Dallas, was a public school teacher. We struggled growing up. I think in the last election, a lot of working people were made some promises about lowering their costs, being on their side. Those promises have been broken. In fact, their costs are going up. This is going to be a very expensive Christmas and holiday season for folks because of the tariffs and because of this bill that they just passed. And what we need is somebody who's going to be on our side and actually has ideas to unrig what I think is a rigged system and a rigged economy.
Yeah, you hear from people when you're at the store. What sort of things are people upset with when it comes to our state?
Yeah. Well, we've had 5 town halls in the last 10 days all around the state. And I've been thrilled with the questions, the seriousness of it. I think folks are very fired up about this election rigging, I call it, this redistricting that just passed, to try and steal 5 congressional districts. But I think they're also just wondering, does anybody see me? Is anybody on our side? And that's one of the things I really feel strongly as a Texan. I'm a 4th generation Texan. And we've gotten to this place where our leaders have become followers. And they're all just chasing one person's approval instead of trying to serve 30 million of us. I don't think that's who we are. We've always been Texans, an independent state, a place where if you know anything about us, you know we're a Texan. And we got to get back to that. We have to have leadership that will see us, that will fight for us, that, obviously we have parties and politics and all that kind of stuff. But first and foremost, you should be a Texan. That's what I am. That's what I want to do in the Senate.
You talk about these town halls. Our Democratic Texas leaders are having these town halls. One name that comes to mind is Beto O'Rourke. We've seen rallies where he has spoken there. James Talarico, our state rep right now, Joaquin Castro. Was this a group decision of some of our top Democratic officials here in the state who decided, Colin, you should run for this position?
Well, I don't do group decisions.
Okay.
I decide, for myself what I'm going to do. But we launched a series of town halls we called the Unrigged Texas Tour, to talk about that they're trying to rig these elections so they can rig the economy against you. You see that in the bill that they passed. That's going to raise energy costs here on average by $800 a year. That's going to kick 1.7 million Texans off their health care. All for what? Not to invest in our kids or our infrastructure, but to cut taxes for the rich and the well-connected. That's the exact opposite of what they said they're going to do in the last election, right? And so we've been going around the state, and like I said, we've had 5 in the last 10 days, all around. And one of the things I love is when people bring their kids to these events. And the last one we had in Collin County, somebody came up, a woman with her 2 sons, and they have earnest questions about what can we do when we feel like nobody is on our side, nobody's fighting for us, and we feel like this is a really dangerous time. And I think that what I'm seeing is that Texans are hungry for change. They're hungry for new leadership. They're hungry for somebody who will put them first. That's what I want to give them.
I saw an internal memo from your campaign. You traveled to Kerrville to talk to voters, correct? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we were there to volunteer.
Volunteer? Did you have a chance to talk to any voters?
Of course,
there?
Yeah.
When I was down there after the floods, I remember seeing a flag draped over a business that said, "This is MAGA country," saying we're a big Trump country down there.
Yeah.
That's a big challenge for not just you, but any Democrat that wants to run in the state, is trying to get some of those rural Texans to flip over to Democratic vote. What's the messaging you can provide to those types of Texans in the rural areas that will get them to take you seriously and say, yes, I want to see Colin Allred in the U.S. Senate?
I'm so glad you asked that because listen, I feel like folks like John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, that they have failed rural Texas. This bill they just passed is going to likely lead, by some estimates, to 15 rural hospitals closing across our state. If you want to live in an area where you are hundreds of miles from a hospital, then vote for these guys, right? Because that's exactly what these policies are going to lead to. They voted against investing in our infrastructure in our rural communities. They've not helped us update the farm bill to make sure that we can bring in a new generation of farmers and keep farmers who want to stay there on their land. These tariffs are going to hit our farmers as well. So there's so much, I think. But also, when you talk about education, most of the small towns that I love to go to around our state, in many cases, the high school will be the center of that town. Don't try and go get some business on a Friday night, because everybody's going to be at the high school football game, right? And they're proud of their high school. And when we're taking money out of our public education system, when we're taking money out of the education system and devaluing it, that's hitting rural Texas harder than anywhere. And so, listen, I was captain of the football team at Baylor. I know who we are. I've seen the countryest boys in the world sitting right next to a kid who's never left the inner city, who understand working together that they actually have a lot in common and they can become brothers. I think that we can bridge these divides. I've seen it. I know it's possible. I want to try and do it in the campaign.
You mentioned being captain of the Baylor football team. Yeah. You would have a unique position if you were to be elected to the U.S. Senate as a former college athlete and a lawmaker. I want to get your take on sort of the football landscape, college football landscape,
sure, yeah.
NIL deals. Yeah. And there's kind of been a push at the federal level to regulate how we do this NIL. I want to see what's your take on it, and if you were in that power, would you want to see any kind of regulation?
I worked on it quite a bit when I was in Congress. In fact, I worked on it with a friend of mine named Anthony Gonzalez, who was also an NFL player. He played for the Colts, I played for the Titans, and we came in together. He was a Republican, I was a Democrat, but we both thought that we should have some rules for the road to make sure that we have some national standards in place, so we don't have a race to the bottom when it comes to NIL. And my biggest concern is always the kids. It's about whether or not they're being exploited, and particularly some of the agents that are circling around. In the NFL, an agent can only take a 3% part of your contract. There's no such limit for these kids, right? And about 99% of them are not going to play professional football or professional sport, right? So we need to make sure that they can get their education, that they can hopefully graduate with a degree, but with some skills that they can go on and use for a career. And so I want to see them make money. When I was at Baylor, I was playing a video game with my likeness, the NCAA football game, and I had my jersey selling in the bookstore, and I was dead broke, right? I want to see them making money, but I want to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of and that they get an education.
Okay. This is going to go out to viewers all across our states. Those are people that you're looking to get their vote from. I want to ask you one more time, why should Texans vote for Colin Allred?
Yeah, listen, I'm a fourth-generation Texan. I know who we are. I want to fight for us. I think that we're in a moment now, it's an inflection point, where we can go one way or another. We can continue down the road of division and extreme and end up in a place that we won't recognize, or we can self-correct. And listen, I'm going to give this campaign everything I possibly have. Doing 5 town halls in 10 days all over our state means that you're traveling a lot. And when I'm out there, I take seriously the responsibility of trying to gather the voices and the hopes of Texans, and to try and make sure that we have somebody to represent us in Washington. I think we've had a bunch of followers, and to be honest with you, bootlickers who've been representing us. And that's not who we are. We can go in a different direction. I can win this election, and I hope folks will help me and support me.
Anything else you want to add, sir?
No, thanks so much. Sick and bears.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.